It was 11:43 p.m. on a lonely stretch of Highway 7, nearly 60 miles outside Nashville. No houses, no gas stations, no passing cars, just endless darkness and the sound of tires rolling over old asphalt. Bosco had driven this road for almost 20 years, every Tuesday, the same highway, the same silence. He knew every curve, every faded road sign, every shadow cast by the moon. And that's exactly why what he saw that night made his heart skip. A young woman standing alone, perfectly still on the shoulder of the highway. She wasn't waving for help. She wasn't crying. She wasn't even looking around. She simply stood there, as if she'd been waiting, not for a car, but for his. Bosco tightened his grip on the steering wheel. "Don't stop," he whispered to himself. Nothing good ever happened to someone stranded on Highway 7 after midnight. At least, that's what the old truckers always said. But Bosco had always believed that kindness mattered. So, he slowed the truck, rolled down the passenger window, and asked gently, "Miss, are you all right?" The young woman slowly turned her head. Her face was beautiful, but it was her eyes that made Bosco uneasy. They weren't frightening, not angry, not empty. They were simply too deep, as though they had witnessed far more than anyone her age ever should. "I need to get home." Her voice was barely above a whisper, calm, almost peaceful. The kind of calm that somehow felt wrong. Bosco cleared his throat. "Where's home?" "Millbrook. 14 miles. Bosco looked down the empty highway, then back at her. Finally, he unlocked the door. "Get in." She climbed inside without a word, closed the door gently, folded her hands neatly in her lap, and stared straight ahead. Not at Bosco, not out the window, just straight ahead. Welcome to Haunted Stories. Tonight's tale isn't about monsters or haunted houses. It's about two strangers who spent 14 miles terrifying each other. Without realizing, they were both hiding the exact same secret. For the first few miles, neither of them spoke. Only the steady hum of the engine filled the silence. Bosco reached over, turned on the radio. Nothing. Every station hissed with lifeless static. He frowned, tapped the radio twice. Still nothing. With a quiet sigh, he switched it off. "So, you live in Millbrook?" Jennifer nodded. "Yes." "What were you doing out here this late?" "Walking." Bosco gave a nervous chuckle. "Walking? Out here?" She nodded again. "I always walk here." The answer settled heavily inside the truck. Bosco glanced toward her. Something didn't make sense. Her white dress was perfectly clean. No dirt, no dust, not even a wrinkle. As if she'd never taken a single step along that lonely road. But he told himself he was imagining things. He had been driving for hours. Maybe he was simply tired. "It's dangerous out here," Jennifer answered softly. "I know." Nothing more. The silence returned, long, heavy, uncomfortable, until suddenly she spoke again. "Do you drive this road often?" Bosco smiled faintly. "Every week." "For 20 years." She slowly looked toward the windshield. "Then, you know the curve." Bosco's smile disappeared. What curve? The one with the old oak tree. A cold sensation crept across Bosco's back. Of course he knew it. Every driver did. It was the sharpest bend on Highway 7, the place where accidents always seemed to happen. He forced a smile. Yeah, I know it. Jennifer's voice became quieter. So much sadness happened there. Bosco swallowed. What do you mean? She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she slowly turned toward him. For the first time since entering the truck, in the faint dashboard light, her eyes looked different. Not sick, not glowing, not supernatural, just endlessly deep, like looking through an open doorway into complete darkness. Bosco quickly looked back at the road, trying to ignore the chill running through his body. What's your name? She hesitated, then answered, Jennifer. Jennifer what? A tiny smile crossed her lips. Just Jennifer. A few more miles passed. Then, without warning, the temperature inside the truck dropped. Not little by little, all at once. Bosco could suddenly see his own breath. He glanced at the heater, still set to 72 degrees. He turned it higher. Nothing changed. If anything, the truck became even colder. Are you cold? Jennifer never looked away from the road. I am always cold. Something inside Bosco told him this ride was about to become something he would never forget. Strange feelings settled deep inside Bosco's chest. Not fear, not yet. Just the quiet certainty that something about tonight was terribly wrong. He cleared his throat. So, where exactly do you live in Millbrook? Jennifer answered softly. I don't live there anymore. Bosco frowned. But you just said... She slowly turned toward him. I said, I need to go home. Home isn't always where you live. Those words lingered inside the truck. Bosco couldn't explain why, but they frightened him more than anything she'd said so far. He tightened his grip on the steering wheel. Then, Jennifer quietly asked, Do you believe in ghosts, Bosco? Bosco's hands froze. His heartbeat thundered inside his ears. He slowly turned toward her. How do you know my name? Jennifer didn't blink. I know this road. I know everyone who travels it. Then, almost as if she already knew his answer, she asked again, Do you believe in ghosts? Bosco swallowed hard. His voice barely escaped. No. Jennifer looked out the windshield again. You should. Neither of them spoke for nearly a mile. Only the tires rolling across the empty highway. Only the sound of Bosco's breathing, growing faster with every passing second. Finally, Jennifer broke the silence. October is when they come back. Bosco forced a nervous laugh. Who comes back? She answered without emotion. The people who never left. This road has taken many lives. Most people remember the accidents. Very few remember the people. Bosco felt a chill race down his spine. He wanted to ask another question. Instead, he asked the only one he could. Jennifer, are you... The words caught in his throat. She finished the sentence for him. What do you think? Bosco looked down. His hands were shaking. He hadn't even noticed. I'm pulling over. Jennifer's voice suddenly became firm. No, not yet. We're almost there. Almost where? She slowly raised one finger, pointing through the windshield. The curve. The old oak tree. The place where everything changed. Bosco looked ahead. There it was, the sharp curve every truck driver feared. The enormous oak tree stood beside the road, just as it always had. Dark, ancient, watching. He eased off the accelerator. The truck rolled slowly toward the bend. Jennifer spoke again. "Stop here." Bosco pulled onto the shoulder. The engine idled quietly. Neither of them moved. Jennifer stared through the passenger window, at the tree. Its thick trunk carried a deep scar, as though something unimaginably violent had struck it years ago. She whispered, "Look carefully." Bosco leaned forward. The scar was enormous, weathered by time, yet somehow still fresh enough to notice. "What happened here?" Jennifer slowly turned toward him. "When I was 19, I was riding home with my friends. It was October. We came around this curve, too fast. The driver lost control." She looked back toward the tree. "We never made it home." Bosco couldn't breathe. The truck suddenly felt impossibly small. Jennifer lowered her eyes toward her lap. For the first time, Bosco noticed something. He wished he hadn't. Her hands. They weren't completely solid anymore. The seat beneath them was faintly visible through her fingers. His heart nearly stopped. "Jennifer, what are you?" She closed her eyes. A single tear rolled slowly down her pale cheek. "I've been walking this road for 20 years, waiting, hoping, trying to remember what home feels like. I thought, if someone finally stopped, maybe I could find my way." Bosco sat frozen. Everything suddenly made sense. The cold, the radio, the silence, her impossible knowledge, and those eyes. Eyes that carried decades of loneliness. Without saying another word, Bosco shifted the truck into drive. He didn't know whether she was alive or dead. He didn't even know if he believed his own eyes anymore. But he knew one thing. He couldn't leave her there. Not again. The truck rolled forward, past the old oak tree, past the scar that had waited 20 years, and together, they drove toward Millbrook, neither of them knowing the real journey had only just begun. Millbrook appeared through the darkness, its quiet streets, almost untouched by time. Old streetlights cast long shadows across empty sidewalks, not a single soul, anywhere. Jennifer finally spoke. "Turn left. Here." Bosco nodded silently. The truck rolled onto a narrow residential street. Old wooden houses lined both sides. Most were dark. Some looked abandoned. One porch light flickered weakly in the distance. "There," Jennifer pointed toward an old white house. Bosco gently pulled the truck to the curb. The engine fell silent. Neither of them moved. For a long moment, there was only silence. "We're here." Jennifer looked through the passenger window. A faint smile crossed her face. "I haven't seen it in 20 years." Bosco looked at her. "I'm sorry. I wish things had been different." Jennifer smiled again, not with happiness, with peace. "You stopped. That's enough." "Sorry. Must be the late night talking." Jennifer slowly reached for the door handle, but before she opened it, she turned back toward Bosco. There was something different in her eyes now. Not sadness, not fear, only kindness. "Bosco, can I ask you something?" He nodded. "Do you remember your wife?" Bosco frowned. "My wife? Of course I do." Jennifer tilted her head gently. Then, why haven't you gone home? Bosco stared at her. I don't understand. Jennifer lowered her eyes. You never made it home either. The words struck him harder than any scream ever could. His breathing became uneven. No, that's not possible. I've been driving every Tuesday for 20 years. Jennifer's voice barely rose above a whisper. Yes, you have, but not among the living. Bosco laughed nervously. No, you're wrong. He reached for the ignition, turned the key. Nothing. Again, nothing. The dashboard lights flickered, then faded. His eyes drifted toward the fuel gauge, still, completely full, exactly as it had been all night. Bosco slowly looked into the rear-view mirror. For the first time, he didn't see himself, only the empty driver's seat. Oh, my God. Excuse me. He remembered. The rain, the blinding headlights, the sharp curve, the old oak tree, the crash, the silence. 20 years ago, on this very road, Bosco had died, and somehow he had never realized it. Every Tuesday, he had driven the same route, picked up the same deliveries, passed the same places, believing he was still alive. A tear rolled down his cheek. I never got to say goodbye. Jennifer gently placed her hand over his. This time, it felt warm. You can now. Bosco closed his eyes. He thought of his wife, her smile, her laughter, the little farmhouse they dreamed of growing old in. He whispered, I hope you forgave me. Outside, the first light of dawn touched the horizon. Jennifer stepped out of the truck. Bosco followed. Neither of them looked afraid anymore. The cold had disappeared. Jennifer smiled one last time. Thank you for finally bringing me home. Bosco smiled back. And thank you for showing me the way. Together, they walked toward the old house. With every step, their figures became lighter, more transparent, until the morning mist embraced them, and they were gone. Some truck drivers still say, if you drive Highway 7 just before midnight, you might see an old green pickup rolling quietly through the fog. And if you're kind enough to stop, for someone waiting alone, you may help them find peace. Or you may discover you've been searching for your own. Drive safely. You never know who might be waiting just beyond the headlights. Thank you for listening. Sleep well, if you can.